54. The Three Evil Things.
Zarathustra is still climbing up his mountain. We get a sense of how tall this mountain is, that it takes him days to climb it. Until he gets to his cave, he keeps philosophizing.
1. In my dream, in my last morning dream, I stood today on a promontory, beyond the world. I held a pair of scales and weighed the world. Alas that the rosy dawn came too early to me. She glowed me awake, the jealous one. Jealous is she always of the glows of my morning dream.
Zarathustra is usually welcoming of the rosy dawn, but this time he is upset by it, because it woke him up from his dream. We have yet another dream, then, but here, for the first time, it is a happy dream. He dreamt himself standing in a high place, and using scales to weigh the world.
Measurable by him who hath time, weighable by a good weigher, attainable by strong pinions, divinable by divine nutcrackers, thus did my dream find the world. My dream, a bold sailor, half ship, half hurricane, silent as the butterfly, impatient as the falcon, how had it the patience and leisure today for world weighing? Did my wisdom perhaps speak secretly to it, my laughing wide-awake day-wisdom which mocketh at all infinite worlds? For it saith, where force is, there becometh number the master. It hath more force.
In his dream, he saw the world as something that can be explained and measured. This goes against his belief that reality is chaotic and ever-changing. But he also believes that reality is driven by will to power, which wants to impose itself on the world, and that it is possible for this will to power to create a worldview that seemingly explains and predicts all of reality. The tools of reason, mainly mathematics, are actually capable of imposing a worldview that approximates reality, despite it being chaotic. In his dream, he imagined that he managed to create such a worldview.
How confidently did my dream contemplate this finite world, not newfangledly, not old-fangledly, not timidly, not entreatingly. As if a big round apple presented itself to my hand, a ripe golden apple with a coolly soft velvety skin, thus did the world present itself unto me. As if a tree nodded unto me, a broad-branched, strong-willed tree, curved as a recline and a footstool for weary travellers, thus did the world stand on my promontory. As if delicate hands carried a casket towards me, a casket open for the delectation of modest adoring eyes, thus did the world present itself before me today.
In his dream, he felt at one with the world. He felt that the world opened itself up before him, and revealed its secrets. It is significant that it happened to him at night. Day, as we know, symbolizes enlightenment for Zarathustra, symbolizes trying to figure things out by using your reason. We also know that he does not believe that reason can figure out all of reality. But at night, symbolizing a time when reason is dormant, we use our other faculties to understand reality. And some believe that these faculties are superior to reason. The mystics and the romantics believe that one can experience temporary illuminations, in which, in a flash, they grasp reality in its entirety. Zarathustra felt something like this last night, but we have to remember that this is merely a dream. He is telling us that he only dreamt that he understood the world, not that it actually happened. But the joyful feeling that accompanied it was real enough. How different it is from his previous dreams, that all came at a time when his spirit was troubled and conflicted. Back on his mountain, we sense that he finds his happiness again.
Not riddle enough to scare human love from it, not solution enough to put to sleep human wisdom. A humanly good thing was the world to me today, of which such bad things are said. How I thank my morning dream that I thus at today's dawn weighed the world. As a humanly good thing did it come unto me, this dream and heart-comforter.
The world, then, is good, and gives us all we need to be happy. This is in line with what Zarathustra said in the past, but he mentions that there are bad things said about this world, by others who deny that it is good. This leads us to the theme of this chapter.
And that I may do the like by day, and imitate and copy its best, now will I put the 3 worst things on the scales, and weigh them humanly well. He who taught to bless, taught also to curse. What are the 3 best cursed things in the world? These will I put on the scales.
What happened to him last night in a dream, he now wants to repeat during daytime. In other words, he wants to use reason to tell us why the world is good. But reason cannot grasp all of reality, so he is going to talk about specific things within reality. He is going to talk about the 3 things that those who say bad things about the world, those that he previously called the preachers of death, claim to be the worst. He is going to use the scales of his reason to figure out if they are, indeed, bad.
Voluptuousness, passion for power, and selfishness. These 3 things have hitherto been best cursed, and have been in worst and falsest repute. These 3 things will I weigh humanly well.
The 3 worst things, according to those who hate earthly life, are voluptuousness, meaning sexual lust, the passion for power, and selfishness. Most moral systems created by humans frown at these 3 human impulses. But are they really bad?
Well, here is my promontory, and there is the sea. It rolleth hither unto me, shaggily and fawningly, the old faithful 100-headed dog monster that I love. Well, here will I hold the scales over the weltering sea, and also a witness do I choose to look on, thee, the anchorite tree, thee, the strong-odoured, broad-arched tree that I love. On what bridge goeth the now to the hereafter? By what constraint doth the high stoop to the low? And what enjoineth even the highest still to grow upwards? Now stand the scales poised and at rest. 3 heavy questions have I thrown in, 3 heavy answers carrieth the other scale.
Some callbacks to previous chapters here. The image of the sea as monster first appeared in The Wanderer, in which the sea was a metaphor for the subconscious that is full of inner currents that cause suffering, but can also be used to create mountains of happiness. He now stands on a promontory, gazing at the sea, about to judge it. In other words, the 3 evil things all come from our subconscious, and are said to cause suffering, but he wants to do some gay science, and see if he can come to think of them positively. The tree metaphor goes back to the tree on the hill, in which it served as a metaphor for a spirit that wants to grow and achieve new heights, but for that, it has to create deeper roots, send its roots deeper into the wells of evil and suffering. In that discourse, he also warned that those who take this route might succumb to voluptuousness and other sensual pleasures, and forget about trying to grow their spirit. This will also have to be taken into account when he puts these 3 impulses on his scale. This chapter has 2 parts. This was the first part, the introduction. Now, he is going to proceed to the actual scaling and judging.
2. Voluptuousness. Unto all hair-shirted despisers of the body, a sting and stake, and cursed, as the world, by all backworldsmen, for it mocketh and befooleth all erring, misinferring teachers. Voluptuousness. To the rabble, the slow fire at which it is burnt, to all wormy wood, to all stinking rags, the prepared heat and stew furnace.
He begins with voluptuousness. The backworldsmen, those who think there is a world of truth beyond our world, frown at sexuality. Moreover, according to Zarathustra, they identify it with this presumably fake world of ours. This is mainly because sex is the source of earthly life, the initiating act of every birth, and thus the thing that most strongly roots us in this world. And since they all experience sexual lust, it is a constant reminder to them of their own earthly body, and thus a source of relentless misery. But there is a form of voluptuousness that Zarathustra himself doesn't like, and that is the sexuality of the rabble. The rabble are just driven by their lust, and it turns them into its slaves.
Voluptuousness. To free hearts a thing innocent and free, the garden happiness of the earth, all the future's thanks overflow to the present. Voluptuousness. Only to the withered a sweet poison, to the lion-willed, however, the great cordial, and the reverently saved wine of wines. Voluptuousness, the great symbolic happiness of a higher happiness and highest hope, for to many is marriage promised, and more than marriage. To many that are more unknown to each other than man and woman, and who hath fully understood how unknown to each other are man and woman.
But voluptuousness isn't bad in itself. To the free spirits, those who self-surpass and constantly strive for new heights, it is a source of power. Sexuality is one of the things that ties us to this earth, and to its joys. It is also our will to give birth to something new, to come together in love and work on a better future. In many ways, Nietzsche's perception of sexuality preempts Freud's, and what he called the eros.
Voluptuousness. But I will have hedges around my thoughts and even around my words, lest swine and libertine should break into my gardens.
He doesn't want to say much about it, because he knows that singing the praises of sex will make him a hero to the licentious and the libertines, who will understand it as validation of promiscuity, and corrupt his message. So he says no more about the subject, and moves to the next so-called evil thing.
Passion for power, the glowing scourge of the hardest of the heart hard, the cruel torture reserved for the cruelest themselves, the gloomy flame of living pyres. Passion for power, the wicked gadfly which is mounted on the vainest peoples, the scorner of all uncertain virtue, which rideth on every horse and on every pride.
He now moves to talk about passion for power, and again, he begins by saying what others have been saying about it. It is seen as coming out of vanity, out of wanting to dominate others, and out of cruelty. It is said to bring strife and misery to the world.
Passion for power, the earthquake which breaketh and upbreaketh all that is rotten and hollow, the rolling, rumbling, punitive demolisher of whited sepulchres, the flashing interrogative sign beside premature answers. Passion for power, before whose glance man creepeth and croucheth and drudgeth, and becometh lower than the serpent and the swine, until at last great contempt crieth out of him. Passion for power, the terrible teacher of great contempt, which preacheth to their face, to cities and empires, away with thee, until a voice crieth out of themselves, away with me.
But for Zarathustra, passion for power comes from the will to power, the driving force at the basis of all life. It is this passion that leads to the breaking of old molds once they have decayed, to make way for something better. Even in its bad manifestations, where people become tyrants over others, there is a good side, because it causes people to rebel against it and come up with something better. The passion for power, then, is the thing that pushes humanity upwards.
Passion for power, which, however, mounteth alluringly even to the pure and lonesome, and up to self-satisfied elevations, glowing like a love that painteth purple felicities alluringly on earthly heavens. Passion for power, but who would call it passion, when the height longeth to stoop for power? Verily nothing sick or diseased is there in such longing and descending. That the lonesome height may not forever remain lonesome and self-sufficing, that the mountains may come to the valleys, and the winds of the heights to the plains. Oh, who could find the right prenomen and honouring name for such longing?
The passion for power is the thing that drives some individuals to go their own way and achieve greatness. But it does something more. even those great ones are still driven by the passion to have power over other people. Hence, they go back down to live among humans, as Zarathustra did. However, since they have sublimated their passion for power, they don't become tyrants, but express it in a different way. This other way is not acknowledged by those who believe passion for power to be all bad, so it doesn't have a name in our language. What should it be called?
Bestowing virtue. Thus did Zarathustra once name the unnameable. And then it happened also, and verily it happened for the first time, that his word blessed selfishness, the wholesome, healthy selfishness that springeth from the powerful soul.
Zarathustra takes us back to the bestowing one, the chapter that ended the first part. This is how he called this virtue, that contemporary society does not acknowledge. Society tells us that it is a good thing to give unto others, and those who obey this commandment are good people. But those who have bestowing virtue are driven to give to others not because they are told they should, and not because they want to get something in return, but because their nature compels them to do so. They are so rich in spirit that they feel a need to share that wealth. This is what you become when you channel your passion for power in the right direction. But in order to do that, he said in that same chapter, you have to be selfish. You have to break away from the herd and chart your own course, developing your spirit until it becomes rich, flowing, and bestowing. And here we come to the third so-called evil thing. In the bestowing virtue, Zarathustra also acknowledged that selfishness can lead one to become corrupt and wicked. The problem is, contemporary society sees only this side of selfishness, and doesn't acknowledge that it can also lead one to become good. If you become an individualist, grow your spirit according to Zarathustra's teachings, you develop the bestowing virtue, and become the best type of human.
From the powerful soul to which the high body appertaineth, the handsome, triumphing, refreshing body, around which everything becometh a mirror. The pliant, persuasive body, the dancer, whose symbol and epitome is the self-enjoying soul. Of such bodies and souls the self-enjoyment calleth itself virtue.
A healthily selfish soul, which works on bettering itself, results in a healthy body, and the healthy body ensures a happy soul, which enjoys itself and needs nothing else for its happiness.
With its words of good and bad doth such self-enjoyment shelter itself, as with sacred groves. With the names of its happiness doth it banish from itself everything contemptible. Away from itself doth it banish everything cowardly. It saith, bad, that is cowardly. Contemptible seem to it the ever-solicitous, the sighing, the complaining, and whoever pick up the most trifling advantage. It despiseth also all bittersweet wisdom, for verily there is also wisdom that bloometh in the dark, a nightshade wisdom, which ever sigheth, all is vain. Shy distrust is regarded by it as base, and every one who wanteth oaths instead of looks and hands, also all over-distrustful wisdom, for such is the mode of cowardly souls.
The happy soul enjoys earthly life. It doesn't believe in any external value system, but it isn't nihilistic. Life itself is its purpose. It rejects any pessimism, nihilism, and desperation, and every other feeling that comes out of searching for the answer in something other than life.
Baser still it regardeth the obsequious doggish one, who immediately lieth on his back, the submissive one, and there is also wisdom that is submissive, and doggish, and pious, and obsequious. Hateful to it altogether, and a loathing, is he who will never defend himself, he who swalloweth down poisonous spittle and bad looks, the all-too-patient one, the all-endurer, the all-satisfied one, for that is the mode of slaves. Whether they be servile before gods and divine spurnings, or before men and stupid human opinions, at all kinds of slaves doth it spit this blessed selfishness. Bad, Thus doth it call all that is spirit-broken and sordidly servile, constrained, blinking eyes, depressed hearts, and the false, submissive style which kisseth with broad, cowardly lips.
The healthily selfish soul also rejects any kind of servitude to others. The individual must create their own values to live by.
And spurious wisdom, so doth it call all the wit that slaves, and hoary-headed and weary ones affect, and especially all the cunning, spurious-witted, curious-witted foolishness of priests. The spurious-wise, however, or the priests, the world-weary, and those whose souls are of feminine and servile nature, oh, how hath their game all along abused selfishness! And precisely that was to be virtue, and was to be called virtue, to abuse selfishness, and selfless. So did they wish themselves with good reason, all those world-weary cowards and cross-spiders.
Those who denigrate selfishness, and instead teach that one should be a servant, are all liars. What drives them is also selfishness. But it is selfishness of the unhealthy kind, one that enjoys subordinating others and reducing their powers. But they hide these intentions in language that pretends to be unselfish. He is talking mainly about Christian priests.
But to all those cometh now the day, the change, the sword of judgment, the great noontide. Then shall many things be revealed. And he who proclaimeth the ego wholesome and holy, and selfishness blessed, verily he, the prognosticator, speaketh also what he knoweth. Behold, it cometh, it is nigh, the great noontide. Thus spake Zarathustra.
In the great noontide, things will turn around. Most people will adopt healthy selfishness and let their passion for power guide them to develop their spirit and make it stronger. This will also make their body healthier, and their voluptuousness will then work in the service of that body. What we saw in this chapter is an example of gay science and of self-surpassing. Zarathustra examined 3 human impulses that tradition branded as evil, and told us that we must repress. But, through gay science, he managed to find a way to channel them in a positive direction, and thus turn them into something enhancing. This makes him more powerful, since he no longer represses these inner powers, but allows them to work in his service. This is what self-surpassing is about.